Breaking the wall between science and culture, Janvi Palki, Contagion, India.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. So as I like to say, there's a very strong professional conversation around science in India, but we don't yet have a strong cultural conversation. Why do I say that? This is the problem, or this is the challenge in many ways that I set out to work with when I moved after nearly 2 decades in academia back to Bangalore to establish what was already a strong model of Science Gallery in India. How does one interpret that in India? And what do I mean by a cultural conversation? Higher education in India is conducted deeply in silos. So this is sort of one major move away from many of the conversations we've heard today. We work with young adults, primarily between the ages of 15 to 28. Dealing with these silos, what we miss are spaces where people from across disciplines can meet. It is extremely rare for a cinematographer or a physicist to be meeting a historian when they're studying in the Indian context. How then was one to set up a science gallery which called for cultural expressions to grow out of the interactions from people across disciplines, but especially artists and scholars? How do you then reduce the distance between research and the public at large? This, in many ways, is the answer, or this is the answer in the sense this is what has set our path: science, culture, and experiment. And what do we mean by experiment in this context? One idea that we're working with in the anticipation of our building getting ready, and then we hope to have a public lab complex, but in the meanwhile, in our public engagement program, what we are working with are living exhibitions. Many of you are already familiar with ideas like living archives, living museums. So what are living exhibitions? It is an attempt which is similar, informed by the spirit of wanting to hand back to the audience the ability to interpret the messages embedded in the exhibits that they are looking at. So interpretive exhibits. How do you make sense of something you encounter? What are the creative processes behind it? And we prioritize dynamic exhibits wherein an exhibit that you see on day 1 is going to change when you see it on day 45. So it's either growing, or it's changing, or live data is being fed into it. So the dynamism of the exhibits matters a lot, and it is an interpretive act on part of the artists and scholars who have put up the exhibit, and that is among the many tools that the exhibition season offers. Programs are integral to such an exhibition season. So what we have are public lecture series, film festivals, masterclasses, workshops, performances, and a range of events, formats of which many of us are familiar with. But what is it that we try to do in this programming? It is to crack open the creativity behind the exhibit, so we get the artists and scholars to speak about what they do. But also, in the public lecture series, for example, the self-same object of inquiry, how might that be constituted by different disciplines? And why might that matter? And why might what they come up with matter? So how is knowledge produced? What drives it? And what are the differences between the kinds of knowledge that different disciplines produce? So we also have tutorial sessions that go with the lectures as well. We also have mediators, young adults who lead conversations in these exhibitions. They act more as provocateurs rather than explainers or guides. Contagion is one such example for which I stand before you today. We did this exhibition during the extremely difficult time of COVID, of course, in the last 18 months. And what we saw during COVID was that many found some critical distance from the relentlessness and the horror that was in many ways unfolding around them, to make sense of it through exhibits like Why is Laughter Contagious? Or Computer Viruses, but also the history of previous pandemics that we've managed to survive. The road ahead, we hope to work in more Indian languages. Right now we work in one Indian language and English primarily. We hope to work in more Indian languages. We hope to have more youth-led programming. So now we are involving more and more early career researchers as well as postdocs, into our programming, but also to increase the number of live research experiments that we carry out during the exhibition season, which might be in behavior, like we did during Contagion, because that's the only one we could carry out given the situation. But we might do more such research going forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Very, very well done. You did give me the chance to actually control the time and just like, I wanted to have this kind of power to control time, you know what I mean? Space-time master. Maybe this is just an evil thing, me.
Yes.
Maybe. Anyway, thank you very much for your inspiring project. And I think it's time now to go to our audience and our jury if they have any questions for you. Yes, we have a question here from one of our jury. Yes, please. Yep.
So how do you make sure that people who come in, say, halfway through the evolution of an exhibit still know what's going on?
Yes, so that's through the conversations with the mediators, but also through the workshops and masterclasses that are going on, which open up, and involve our visitors in those ideas, in the idea behind the exhibit. But also we create an online archive of the exhibit, which they can then view, but they can also go back and mobilize those resources, because they remain online forever, to do that work after the exhibition is over. So those are in many ways resources that remain available.
Great. Do we have any questions? Any more questions from our audience, from our jury? Yes, we have one here from one of our jury.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Great approach. I mean, how do you involve the science, the art part into that overall approach? Yeah, I mean, can you explain a bit more on how you involve that?
Right. So the exhibits themselves are the outcome of the coming together of artists and scholars from across disciplines. So that's one. The public lectures are also given by everybody. So like, for example, during Contagion, we had 23 lectures which involved modelers, clinicians, physicians, sociologists, curators, filmmakers, talking, about things like the language, we use for epidemics the language of war, for example, conquest, extinction, etc. So yes, so that's the entire exercise is one of scientists and scholars and artists, because science for us is very much like the German Wissenschaft or the French science, where the human, the natural, and the social sciences and art come together to create cultural expressions which the public then can engage with, and then use that in order to gain. I think the purpose of all this would be to allow the audience to gain an insight into the processes of knowledge production in order to then mobilize that to understand science in their everyday life.
Fabulous. Yeah. We have another question from one of our juries. Yeah.
How do you engage with vulnerable communities in India?
So we do everything that we can. So, like many of my colleagues who've spoken before me and will speak after me, we organize events at different sites. So, for example, at metro stations, we work with institutions that are already working with vulnerable populations to take our program and deliver it there. We offer, so one of the decisions we took during Contagion was also to have it low-tech rather than to go high-tech and show how skilled we were, in order for the exhibition to be accessible for no matter who. Because when we found out during the workshops and masterclasses, we often found out that there were 5 young adults sitting around one telephone, or one mobile telephone. And so we went low-tech in order to make it accessible and we ensured that the quality of content was maintained. So to answer your question, in short, we work with groups that already have those networks and deliver the content to be able to reach a wide audience.
Amazing. I think our question round is over. Oh, we can have one more. Can we have one more? Yes, we can have.
Hey, can you give an example of an exhibition and what kind of experience, the people go through?
Yeah, like one exhibit, you mean? Yeah. Okay, so I can probably try 2, but let me begin with one. The river Animas in Colorado. So we had an artist who created an exhibit around the increasing pollution, heavy metal pollution in the river Animas. What he did was, there was live data of what was happening in the river on a day-to-day basis, depending on when the quarry, when stuff from the quarry was being washed out, etc. And in the exhibition itself, we had 4 metal sheets. So lead, aluminum, iron, and copper. And the data was being fed into circuits connected to the metal sheets, which created sound, or which were converted to sound. And so depending on when you went and how you listened, you could actually tell what metal was at what concentration during what time of the day. So the expression was cultural, the expression was artistic, but the story behind it, not the story behind it, the data behind it, and in a way you experience that. The other one that if I might quickly talk about is there were 10 panels with mud from 10 lakes in Bangalore city, which an artist collected, and then she had them in these 10 sort of plastic boxes, which you could view. And over the 45-day period that the exhibition was on, life in that mud began to grow. And in one or two, it would not grow at all.
If you can summarize.
But yeah. So essentially, it changed on a day-to-day basis.
That's fabulous. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A massive round of applause.